Hi, it's Alice Chance from Transition Partners. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my vlog today. Everyone's invited to my party. It's all about creating a digitally inclusive space within tech. Enjoy! Hi everyone, and welcome to my digital diversity blog. My name is Alice Chance and I work at Transition Partners. My blog is called Everyone's Invited to My Party, and today I have the absolutely lovely Quinn Daley with me, who I'm so pleased to have with me. So would you like to introduce yourself today, please, Quinn?
Hi, yes. My name's Quinn. My pronouns are they and them, and I work as a software developer at Duke Studios for my company's called Percolator.
Cool. So first question that I like to ask people is, how do you identify?
So I, for the last 3.5 years or so, I've identified as non-binary and trans. And I guess queer is probably a good way to describe. I think the words heterosexual and homosexual don't really work for non-binary people, so queer
No.
to describe my sexual orientation.
I'm so pro the word queer and also like the re-ownership of that word.
Mm-hmm.
I know I say it in front of people sometimes and they feel uncomfortable, like especially like straight cis people, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, so and so's queer, and they're like, you shouldn't say that, and I'm like, you should say that. I think it's such a lovely word. Like I really love it. I think it also encompasses so much more like creativity, and I just think queer is
I mean,
a
it depends on
beautiful
the
way.
person, I think.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. It's such a beautiful way to describe yourself. Sorry, interrupted a bit, but yes. So obviously you are a software developer, but you have your own company. So what
yes.
do you do within your company?
Various different things. I mostly work for clients who have new technology that they want to get off the ground, startups, spin-offs, that kind of thing. Usually before they get any other developers involved, they would hire me to get their technology off the ground and get it to a point where they can hire their own developers. I also work on some of my own products, and the one that I'm most excited about working on at the moment is name.pn. It's very early stages at the moment, but you can visit that URL, and it's a place where you can get your own page on the internet that you can put into your email signature that tells people how to use your name correctly, what pronouns you use, how to pronounce your name. You can upload a little bit of audio of yourself saying your name so that people can hear you pronouncing your name.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just trying to get that to the point where people don't need to ask questions anymore. They can just click on a page.
Yeah, get rid of that sort of initial uncomfortableness. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I know they've started to do bits like that on LinkedIn, but having something like that on an email would just be fantastic. We definitely need to get to a point, especially where like more cis people are announcing their pronouns, just to normalize it for everybody else. So if you're straight and cis and you're watching this, use your pronouns, please. So what does diversity and inclusion mean to you?
Well, I think it's about getting the right voices to the table. So as a software developer, it's a hugely important thing because our world has, since the 1980s, has become quite a white male dominated world. It's actually, reasonably trans friendly compared with other industries. The software world, there are some really like big names in the software world, like Audrey Tang, who are trans. But yeah, diversity is all about bringing the right people to the table so that you can make sure that all people are represented when, like, if you're building a product, it's so common to like present that product from your own perspective, and if your own perspective as a company doesn't include all the voices of the people who you're targeting your product at, then it's going to fail and it's going to look it could even be offensive to them. And so that's the diversity part. Inclusion is about once you've got people involved in your organization, you need to make sure that they feel welcome as part of that organization, and that the differences between them are celebrated and not turned into like they're not fetishized, and they're also not ignored, or people like forgetting about their own privilege happens a lot as well. So if men are brought up in a society where men are taught to talk over women, And if they don't realize that that's the case, that they were brought up that way, then they might carry on talking over women in meetings.
Yes. Oh, I know about that one. But definitely, I think sort of bringing things up, and we spoke about this before, but it's bringing that topic up and people not taking offense to pointing out something that might be offensive, um and yeah, you might feel a bit rubbish about yourself because you've done something, you could potentially have hurt somebody's feelings, but just learn from it. You've made the mistake, learn, move on, and let's all grow and get better in this world.
Yeah, so just on that subject then, I like this phrase, spreading discomfort, this idea that, like, you know, as the person who's different in these situations, you're going to feel uncomfortable all of the time because you encounter these kinds of things all the time. And like, as a trans person, I encounter people getting my pronouns wrong all the time, like all the time.
Yeah.
Even, like, especially actually people who say, oh, that won't be a problem for me, it'll be fine. And then they just get it wrong. Or like, I introduce myself with my pronouns at the start of a meeting and immediately someone uses the wrong pronouns for me immediately afterwards. That happens a lot. And this idea of spreading discomfort is that, like, if you make everybody else in the meeting also announce their pronouns, and you make people aware of the fact that they've got something wrong, then it helps to spread that discomfort a bit, so that you're not the only person in the room feeling uncomfortable all of the time. It's like, being uncomfortable isn't a bad thing. It's that when people feel like they shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable, that's when it becomes a bad thing.
Definitely. No, I love that. And I definitely think that's something that we all need to start doing a lot more of. But I love that sort of term, spreading discomfort. So we kind of touched on it, but how do you feel sort of diversity and also inclusion? What do you think that adds to businesses, and what sort of, for me, it always adds a lot of sort of joy, culture, everything like that. But what do you personally feel like can be added to a business from creating a diverse, inclusive workplace?
Well,
Or
I
even
mean,
not even workplaces, even just open spaces.
yeah, well, I mean, obviously inclusion helps people feel included, and, you know, that's
Yeah.
got to be important, right? Everybody wants to feel like they actually belong in a place. And in the UK, like, trans people at work, you know, I read that Stonewall said that, you know, 18% of trans people are uncomfortable wearing clothes that match their gender at work because of whatever. And, you know, 21% of trans people would feel uncomfortable reporting bullying, transphobic bullying, to their boss. So it's
Really?
like, inclusion is really, really important, because you don't realize, like, a lot of people keep this stuff to themselves because they're scared. Like me,
Definitely.
you know, I was 35 before I even came out to myself as trans, because I was so scared of that world. And, you know, Leeds is a fantastic place for trans people. We have some really great support organizations here, like Trans Leeds and Non-Binary Leeds. And I wouldn't have been able to come out had I not lived in Leeds, I don't think. And then the diversity side of things, like, I mean, working in the product development sphere, it's so important. Like, if your company is just constantly developing products from their own perspective, like, you hear stories about, like, racist hand dryers. Do you know this one, that, like,
No.
some hand dryers, you know, you put your hands under to turn them on, they only work for white people because they just managed to get no people with other skin tones involved in that
It's
development process
awful.
at all, to the point where or like the Google Home device, when it first came out, like, if you had an Indian accent, it couldn't understand anything that you
Yeah,
said.
only registers to like
Yeah,
this sort of tone of voice and
yeah. And like, for the, like, with the name.pn product, I'm trying to undo an age-old problem in the world of software development, that when you ask people to sign up for a form, sign up for an account, you often ask them, what's your first name, what's your last name, what's your gender? And then you give people two options, and you put male
yeah,
first,
dot
even
dot dot.
alphabetically first. Exactly, yeah. And it's like, not everybody has a first name and a last name. Some people use different names in different contexts. Some people, you know, and gender is a much more complicated area than just, I know, and you know, the one that really gets me every time is when they just put male and female, and they put male first, and it's like, female is first alphabetically. There's no reason at
I
all.
know. I literally had this issue today. So I have a real problem with remembering to take any prescription, and I'll go a few days and I won't have taken it. So I thought there's got to be some kind of technology. There's got to be an app other than my alarm clock, which I'll just turn off, that reminds me to take my medication every day. So I thought, right, I'll Google it. The majority of them were actually quite progressive, I thought, because they were for female contraception. The other ones I downloaded were all for sort of elderly people, and the gender stated were only male or female. I had to sort of enter my date of birth. I had to do loads of different stuff, and I was just like, all I want is just some kind of simple software on my phone that's going to remind me, and then remind me again if I haven't done it. And I don't know why they need to know what gender I am. I don't know why they need to know what year I was born. I don't know why they need to know any of this information just to remind me to do something. It just seems so weird, but it's that ticking box thing, and it's still such an issue. And I don't know at what point it's going to go away.
And isn't that fascinating, the thing about like collecting data that you don't need to collect? It's such a common thing. And sometimes software goes like really far. Like when I sorted out all the stuff to do with my name and my titles and things when I came out, I had to go through the process of getting my name changed at every single provider of everything that I own in the world. And sometimes like my pension provider, I said, oh yeah, can I put my gender as this? Can I put my gender as non-binary and whatever? And they said, oh no, you only get these options. And in that case, like that happens a lot where you only get 2 options. So in those situations, I usually say, well, can I have either male gender and Ms. or female gender and Mr. Oh, they don't usually go for that way around because I really don't like Mr. But
well, what about Master when that was a thing?
Oh yeah, exactly. This pension provider said, oh no, our software doesn't allow us to select those 2 combinations together. You can't have female gender, you can't have male gender and Ms. And I was like, someone's coded that. Someone's actually written that rule into the software.
Someone's gone in, someone's made an issue. Someone's made an issue out of that,
Yeah, there's no reason for it at all.
No, that is so strange. And the Miss thing as well, I've noticed this, is Mrs. or Ms. And I'm wondering what happened to Miss. I like a little Miss. I like an MISS. I don't like an MS. There's something about it. I'm a Miss and I like my little Miss. I don't know what's happened.
Well, I mean, what we do in name.pn is we don't like ask people for their title because I think that's the wrong way to do it. It's more like, how would you like to be addressed on an envelope?
Yeah.
Like, give us the whole word that you want. Like, it shouldn't be, what is your title? What is your first initial? What is your surname? It should just be like, what name do you want?
Yeah, what's your name and what would you like me to call you?
I don't want to have a title at all. I want it to just say Q Daily. I don't want it to say, I don't want there to be a title there at all. And so many places, or the places that do, like the TV license, although I managed to get them fixed. When I got my TV license issued, it actually had written on it, none Q Daily.
Oh wow.
Word none.
I bet that made you feel good about yourself. None.
Yeah, but I managed to get that fixed. I had a really nice conversation with them and with their tech department and got that fixed, so future people won't have that.
Oh wow. Well, good on you for actually doing that. But was the conversation actually nice, or was it like you need nice. Oh okay, it was positive. Okay. I didn't know it was a bit more. I would have been upset and probably a bit more forceful than that, but I'm glad you managed to do something nice about it.
No, I always come from a place, I assume that people are coming from a place of ignorance, which is a shame.
Yeah.
You know, and I wish people knew more about what it's like to be trans and how many different kinds of trans there are and all these kinds of things. But I assume that people just don't know, and that in these situations, I'm not going to accuse them of anything. I just want them to fix it. But then sometimes it does go the wrong way. You know, you get weird things. Like I had an article written about me once. Well, it was written about me and someone that I was working on a project with, and he uses he, him pronouns. And all the way through, they managed to use the he, him pronouns for my colleague. And for me, they just didn't, they managed to write it in such a way that they didn't need to use pronouns
whatsoever.
And it sounded so strange and weird and like
big avoidance.
Yeah, and it's like
mysterious Quinn floating around, like no, yeah.
And I was just like, I have pronouns. They're they and them. Just use them. It's fine.
It's like when you don't know how to say someone's name and you feel like you've got to a point where you can't ask them because you've known them for a long time, and it's like, I'm just not going to say anything now, and I'm never going to say their name, and it's like, I'd probably just ask again. I mean, but before we were speaking, we were sort of talking about the annoyances of sort of you having these questions asked to you on a repeated basis, though, when it comes to work, and then what questions people ask and what questions people are asking that they shouldn't be asking. I don't know if you'd like to sort of talk about that.
Yeah, so this is the thing that, like, obviously trans people feel excluded a lot of the time. People make a lot of assumptions about us. or maybe like so many assumptions that we're so excluded we don't even know we've been excluded. Like it's very common. They said one survey said that 1 in 3 employers admitted they'd be less likely to like hire trans people or take trans people to job interviews just because they were uncomfortable being in the same room. But yeah, the questions that trans people get the same questions over and over and over and over again, and some of them are like really personal and really offensive and not suitable for the workplace
that you wouldn't ask anyone.
Yeah, exactly. Like you wouldn't ever ask anyone else like what kinds of surgery they'd had, or like, what's underneath their clothes. Like those are not questions you ask your work colleagues, and you wouldn't so I'd say that pronouns, it's always okay to ask someone's pronouns, but just don't do it to only the people you think are trans. Like if you start asking people their pronouns, like ask everyone their pronouns, and try to get used to introducing yourself with your pronouns, because otherwise all you're doing is you're just shifting from I'm guessing that you're this gender to I'm guessing that you're trans, and that's not any better, really. We need to stop guessing whether people are trans or not, stop guessing what gender people are, and start just assuming we don't know anyone's gender until they've shared their pronouns. And the reason we need to share pronouns is because English is a flawed language. Like we could live in a world where we didn't ever need to disclose our gender at work, which would be amazing, but we all speak this language, which when you're talking about someone, you have to reveal their gender. And so that's why that's why we talk about pronouns rather than gender, because pronouns are the thing that we actually need. The gender is kind of irrelevant to most aspects of work.
100%. No, I completely agree. I think we've just spoke about some really interesting things. I love speaking to you. So have you got anything else you'd like to sort of add to our conversation today? Because I know we spoke about so much before as well, and we've spoke a couple of times, but
yeah, I guess there's just a couple more things. One is if you want to be better about having trans people, about like treating trans people with respect in your workplace, it's a really good idea to get something called a trans awareness trainer to come and do training to your senior people or to your entire company. And we have some amazing ones in Leeds. We've got Natasha Handley, who works for Trans Leeds, and we've got Dr. Kit Hayham. And they're both really amazing trainers who you can hire for not very much money, I think, to come into your organization and teach you how to be sensitive towards trans people. You don't have to do it to your colleagues.
Yeah. It's a learning process, and I'll make sure that I get those names off you so we can pop those into the comments. Because definitely I think it's something that we could all do with learning about. And Google's your friend. If you don't know what to say to somebody, there's so much you can read about online. And
so Google is your friend, but at the moment, there is right now, especially in this country, there is a coordinated attack against trans people. Against giving trans people access to the spaces that they've always had access to, and so on. And the media, parts of the media especially some of the right-wing broadsheets like the Telegraph and Times, have really gone really anti-trans in the last few 3 or 4 years. And so when you Google, sometimes you find this horrible stuff. And I guess I wanted to say that like being an ally at the moment, and I think this applies for all kinds of diversity, isn't just about like saying that you are an ally or like painting in pink, white and blue. It's about like actually standing up when you experience this discrimination, or like if you see one of your friends on Facebook sharing one of these transphobic articles, to like reply to them and say, please be aware of these issues and maybe link them to something written by a trans person, because trans people so rarely get to write in the media at all, with the exception of maybe Fox and Owl and a few other people. There's quite a lot of people whose voices are only represented on social media because
or only represented when they're needed to be represented as well, which I think is obviously an issue across sort of diversity, that people are only called upon when they're needed to, or when there's a particular problem in the media that's arisen, and there's been some anti-trans stuff, but we'll speak to every trans person that we know to get them to come and write for us, and that's when they're needed, and it's not spread out fairly throughout like their working life.
But it goes even further than that with the media and trans people, that especially the BBC, which has this complete obsession with presenting an unbiased view. Sometimes an issue is so like such a non-issue in the real world that they'll get someone on who has no experience, there's no academic background and the subject is nothing other than just like a raging Twitter troll, and they'll get them on to be the opposite voice and make it sound like these are two equal and opposing views.
Yeah.
One of them is reality and the other one is the deluded fantasy of a small group.
I've seen that before on whatever the awful program that Piers Morgan used to do. I don't know if he still does it in the morning, where they just used to bring Monroe Bergdorf in and they'd get somebody else who was anti-trans and they'd just attack her, but they all had the same opinion as the anti-trans person, so everyone was attacking Monroe, and she would just sit there but she'd always hold herself so well. But yeah, I've definitely seen that before, and it's I think it's obviously a really sort of issue that we're not touching on. And I know there's these new laws that the Conservatives are trying to pass at the moment about sort of changing the toilets that trans people, whether they've had their affirming surgery or not. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, like, who knows? They put out these vague statements and then they go quiet because they know all they're trying to do is appease this small transphobic group.
Yeah. But it's terrifying for trans people. It's terrifying for anybody. Well, I don't think they understand this. Like the scare, like you said, the scaremongering that's happening because of this.
Well, changes like that are worse. They affect everybody. So if you introduced a rule that said you have to prove who you are before you go into a toilet, suddenly everybody is having to carry around their birth certificates with them just to use a toilet.
Yeah.
Everybody is anyone who looks anything different from the stereotype of their gender is going to be asked at the door to prove who they are. It's awful. Like, it's never going to actually happen, you'd hope.
Yeah.
But the thing that the transphobic people are campaigning for is a world that no one, cis or trans, would ever want to live in.
No, of course not. But they don't see it from that point of view, and they never will, because they're ignorant and horrible.
Well, very often they're not horrible. They are ignorant. That's true. It's very common that like they do a lot of targeted campaigning to sort of twist people to their point of view, and they encourage them to block anyone who disagrees with them until they get to this point where the only people they can see on their Twitter feed are people who
have the same opinion of them.
Yeah, exactly. And and they'll say, oh yes, science is on our side, and when by science they mean like a really simplified version of science from technology or whatever, and it's like, no, science is not on your side. Like, look at the
really weird
science that's coming out in peer-reviewed journals, and you'll see it contradicts exactly what you're saying.
Definitely. Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. You've given us a lot of information there, which I will be making sure to post in the comments. I'll post it in the top banner of this as well. So obviously we spoke about some trans training people that are specifically Leeds-based that can sort of come into your business and can educate you. I recommend that you do this if your work isn't able to do this or isn't doing this. There's lots of things you can read yourself, like you mentioned. Stonewall I know is great for sort of trans information. Have a look, make sure you're getting it from trans friendly sources. Have you got anything else to add today?
I just wanted to say as well, if you're watching this and you think you might be trans, like I was in my mid-30s still wondering whether I was or not. It's always okay to contact those organizations, those support organizations in Leeds, trans Leeds and non-binary Leeds. Go along to a meetup. You don't have to like be really certain about yourself first. And those people are there to support you, and they supported me when I was first coming out. And I would just really highly recommend getting in touch with them.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this one. So thank you so much, Quinn. And I hope everyone else has enjoyed it, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.